Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Valley Sports Rewind. I'm Mike Canicci, and we are honored to have today. He was the MVP of the 1995 Class L tournament, helping the Ansonia Chargers win their first and only Class L basketball championship, and we are joined by the great Lenny Svelnys. And Lenny, I want to thank you for coming on. We've talked before, and it's an honor to have you again.
Well, thank you for having me on, and I can't believe it's already been almost a year since I was on your Hometown Hero segment.
Yeah, it goes quick. We're getting old.
It does.
You know, Lenny, we're going to talk about that great championship team, but a couple of things that I really are fascinated by, you know, when I talk to Sean Morse, we always get into this, is this, you know, the basketball growing up, especially in the Valley, and, you know, I believe you played with Sean on the Magicians. I also think, were you on Charters as well?
But yeah, both of us together were, we were on Charter Hose. His dad coached, and we kind of like went up the system together. So it was kind of interesting because both of us were around the same height, so we kind of dubbed ourselves as being like the Twin Towers.
Right.
So you kind of needed to have the height to have some kind of success. I mean, we always lost to Steve Coughlin's teams.
Right.
It was like we were always fighting for second place. But yeah, it was definitely interesting. Playing, with Sean and in those teams.
You know, you talked about being, dubbed the Twin Towers. So you both were very tall at a very young age. When did the love for basketball start? Did it start right away? I mean, were you into basketball, say, like 7 years old? What would you say it started?
Yeah, I mean, it started with basketball and then kind of got in. I actually fell in love with baseball, like I think even more than basketball. Just me growing up as fast as I did, I just kind of got pushed into basketball, and as I had success with that, I started to like that, a little bit more. And but I probably had equal time, playing baseball and practice as much in baseball, but just wasn't able to have the same success in basketball. So then I just kind of moved it all over to the basketball right around high school.
Right. Now, was there anybody growing up that you emulated, that you idolized? I know probably at that age, Larry Bird was still in his prime. You also had guys like Robert Parrish, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I mean, were there any big guys that you definitely wanted to be? Ironically
enough, those were the guys that because my friend was a Celtics fan, so I would make fun of the age factor and the fact that right around then Larry Bird was having the bad back, and I kind of missed his prime, that mid 80s prime. So I didn't really start watching sports until about 86, 87, and I think it was more baseball. So 88, 89, that's like when it was the Jordan era, Bo Jackson, so Dominique Wilkins. So I kind of liked watching the dunkers, and that was eventually what I kind of tried to emulate, later on and even going into my 20s. So because I was always fascinated with, dunking the basketball. That was the big thing. So I mean, sitting in front of you two guys, I don't know if you ever had that experience, but there's a feeling that just it's a rush that you get. So
one of the things I remember being as a kid is when you would hear people say, "Oh, you're very tall," but when you see people taller than you, you always say, "God, I wish I could be his size," stuff like that. I mean, when you were say in 4th or 5th grade and you kind of realized you were very tall, I mean, did you like it? I mean, did you hope you were going to continue to keep growing? I mean,
it garnered a lot of positive attention. So I would, going through the school system, the teachers were almost enamored at because I mean they see the averages of heights and stuff like that, so it kind of made you feel special a little bit. Although my having back pain and knee pain from all the sports and being as tall as I am, it's a trade-off. So I'm happy that I'm the height that I am now, but it definitely has its downsides. Man, I gotta duck in the shower to get my head wet and. So.
And now, were your parents tall? I mean, is this something you picked up? I mean, because sometimes, you'll see a person, he's real tall, you'll think, oh, his father must be tall, and then they're not.
Yeah, my dad was, ranked as like the tallest in the family for a while. I mean, he was 6'4",
Wow.
And kind of shrunk down. He's 6'3" now because he's older. But both my brothers and I are right around the same height, So, I mean, I have two brothers that are 6'6", 6'7".
Wow.
And, I came in at like just a hair under 6'8" is my final height. So,
right.
Which,
and now you're the youngest.
I just clear the doorways when I walk. But I still feel like I got a duck because there might be like something hanging just a little bit lower. So once in a while I get caught, but yeah, so.
Now, a lot of times too, people, you said yourself, you were into baseball more. Sometimes people that are tall like that, basketball isn't always a love for them. And it's the same thing if somebody's, short. Sometimes, you'd say, well, you might be a better baseball player or football player, and they tend to love basketball because that's their passion. I mean, did you just feel like because of your height, basketball was expected of you?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it and the other thing too is, again, I think it was just the little, dribs and drabs of success that, that was kind of coming along with it. I mean, playing with, with the charter hose and the the junior biddy and the senior biddy with the magicians, it was like, an outsider looking in, like, wow, this kid's got some raw talent. Like, I mean, he has to get coordinated,
right.
But, he understands the game a little bit. He passes, he shoots, he blocks shots. I mean, it's, so he just, I think the classic quote was, this kid's got to get some meat on his bones.
Right.
Because I was just stretching out so fast. I mean, I think in 8th grade, I was over 6 feet. I mean, 6 foot,
right.
6'1". I mean, that's a decent height. So,
so now, how old were you when you first played in an organized basketball league, whether it was biddy, whatever? How old would you say?
Yeah, I think it had to have been 7, 8 years old. I mean, yeah, maybe been 8, 9
right.
years old. Right.
Did you like it right away? I mean, when you were playing,
yeah. I loved it. So
right. And was that when you played with charters, or was that?
Yeah, that was the first. Yeah,
right.
Pretty much my organized basketball line, timeline went, start up with charter hose. Then magicians, 7th grade, 8th grade was magicians, but we also played citywide. So Sean and I were on the same citywide team as well. Right. Those 3 teams we got to play together. So he's obviously been a long time friend, still is to this day. So so we had the citywide, and then it just went right into high school, and then I kind of bounced around and played for Milford Academy, and tried getting into colleges, and tried trying out for semi-pro teams and stuff like that, and so
right. And now that first year that you played, I mean, a lot of times with big men at that age, they're big, but the one thing they need to work on is being aggressive and things like that. I mean, did you shoot a lot that first year, or were you kind of timid to shoot?
First year in charter?
Yes.
No.
No.
No. I think I was more, I think I, kind of came off the bench a little bit. I don't even remember if I started. But I remember I was behind Chris Zura, and he was also I think he was kind of a center, back then, because he was tall too. So
right.
And I don't really remember. We had a guy named Kurt Richter who shot a lot, and he was good. He made a lot of outside baskets and stuff. So it was fun to watch him play, and have the parents come and really cheer everybody on. I mean, the gymnasium, which is, I think it's now, it's it was at Lincoln Hayes. So and now it's an apartment building, but that that little gym was that was the the place that we got together for all the junior biddy games, and with the parents yelling and stuff like that. I got loud in there, so it was fun.
Right.
We had wood backboards. I mean, it wasn't even glass backboards.
Right. We'll get into this more after, because I do want to talk about the whole MVL alumni page. But as I watch this page, you haven't just gotten old MVL games. You've gotten some of the games with the magicians, and I've been able to view a couple of them. And I mean, to me, that's very nostalgic, and it's amazing that stuff like that was saved. But talk a little bit about the magicians, because I believe you played for Sam Smith, who was a very good player for Emmett O'Brien over the years. And would you say Sam had a big impact on your play and how well you did over the years? Yeah,
Sam he came in at the perfect time. So I think Tom Lolly's father was coaching when I first came up, because it was 2 years of senior video. So
Right.
his father coached in 7th grade, and then, for whatever reason, he wasn't, I don't even know what it was, but he wasn't coaching in the 8th grade. Sam stepped in, and he was like, he just had that basketball knowledge. He had the swagger with the kids.
Right.
And, without being hard on anybody, he had this great balance of being able to coach and had a great ability to encourage, to bring the best out of the kids at that time. I mean, I remember, talking about, the aggression and stuff like that, and you got to get in there and rebound. And I mean, I don't think I've ever seen him in a negative light, or remember him in a
Right.
negative light. It was always positive. So,
Right.
I just remember him, he's like, you got to grab the rebound like it's a Snickers bar or whatever, and just so and you got to want, you got to be hungry, and so I remember all of that, and it was a lot of fun playing for him.
Right. And there's really no pressure, but as a kid you feel pressure at the time because you're in a league and you want to win, stuff like that. But I mean, it seems like when you watch these games, you guys had a lot of fun playing together. I mean, you probably look back and those are some of the best times of your life, I would think.
Well, it was developmental. I think, looking back, it's crazy how a bunch of things kind of come together in that like 8th grade freshman year time frame, because you look at basketball as like a culture and what was going on during that time. I mean, like Nike sneakers were like,
that was the big thing.
I mean, the David Robinson Air Force 5s, the Jordans, the Barclays, and then Reebok, they came charging back with their ads with the D Brown, the King Kong Jam commercials, and Dominique Wilkins was a part of that, and I mean, I was always a Nike guy. I didn't really buy too many Reeboks, but when Larry Johnson came up and had the Converse, I mean, I bought Converse because of Larry Johnson. I was like, I want some React juice in my shoes. So, so you had that, and then you had the music. The music, obviously being hip hop and being that it just like exploded with Tribe Called Quest and Naughty by Nature and Cypress Hill and all those bands. So I mean, it you add that, it was just and then of course the players that were coming through. So I mean, we were just coming up to where Jordan was winning his first championship in '91.
Right. Yeah.
Right in '92, you have Shaq coming through the college ranks, who's going to bust into the pros, and you also have the '92 Dream Team. So basketball, and then being that it was
then you had those great Duke teams.
I mean, you actually, I mean, people don't talk about the '04 UConn team where Okafor and Gordon were. They talk about the Duke teams. They talk about UNLV V teams. They talk about Michigan, who didn't win. I mean, those early '90s teams are just that whole era in basketball.
That UConn team, I mean, was tremendous to watch. Tate George, Chris Smith.
Yeah, I mean, being that there was the Big East tournament, and which is not there anymore. So I mean, like that whole late '80s, early '90s era, and then again, technology coming through. I mean, the reason why we have the tape of the Magicians. I mean, somebody paid good money, really good money, for a video camera to tape that game. And same thing, with my dad when he taped some of the high school games. I mean, not everybody had a video camera back then, and so I mean, we're very fortunate that we were able to kind of like salvage those memories and kind of like take a look back in time and just kind of view that stuff. So I got a lot of things with a lot of people messaging me and even calling me and talking to me. And I mean, there's guys now that, I mean, I become really good friends with, like Marlon Parker from Kennedy, Devon Parker from Willoughby. His mom still has tapes that he's going to try and get to me. Jermaine Wallace from Willoughby. Like I talk to those guys on a regular basis. I play with them on Sunday. I go up to Waterbury to play with those guys on Sunday. And it's 30 and over, and we just go out there and we play outside, and it's been a really good experience, and they talk about like, wow, it's really cool to see those games.
It really is. I mean, and they've kind of put the football ones up there as well. So I mean, because at the time you're never thinking, oh, we should be recording all this stuff. But years later, you're like, God, we wish we really did. And then to be able to obtain so many of these games, I mean, you want some type of archive in your history, something that you could show your kids, something to that,
Yeah, and that was kind of the goal that I was trying to achieve. And I know that you and Sean are working, on the on your side with the football stuff. And I think it's great. I mean, there's guys that poured so much of their childhood just to get to that point, whether they furthered their career in it or whatever. I mean,
right.
If that is the pinnacle, then I mean it's kind of nice to go back and look and see when when all.
And
I
think the reaction's been great. I mean, you see on Facebook, there's a lot of likes every time something gets put up. People comment on it, and I mean, when you have a guy like Earl Stanley saying, "Wow, I played in that basketball game," because he's known a lot for his football, and you see him in that basketball game, and he's excited to see it. You just know that you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I mean, I didn't realize like that. I mean, he was on an NVL. He was on the only NVL championship. There's only one. I think there was only one NVL championship that was won by Ansonia. I think it was either 82, 83 or 83, 84, and those teams were like phenomenal, and they had to, I mean, Sacred Heart is constantly in the basically in the news now, and for their basketball, but back then Coach Generali, who just stepped down from retiring from being the Holy Cross head coach, was the head coach of the Sacred Heart team, brought in 83, 84 brought a championship to the Sacred Heart school under guys who, I mean, I didn't realize how advanced. I mean, I kind of thought that in high school, like it evolved to like where, dunking and the 3 points. I mean, they didn't have 3-point line at that point.
Right.
It was introduced, I think, like in 88, 89 or something like that, or 90. So the game kind of changed. There was a lot of inside play, get the ball inside and whatever.
Right.
I didn't realize how big and powerful and athletic some of these guys were. So to go back and watch a guy in Sacred Heart like Calvin Glenn throw down 3 dunks in a game, and they were like monstrous. And I'm like, he must have been looking up to Dr. J, because Jordan was just coming into the college ranks. Yeah. So it's like, and I had a conversation with him through Facebook, and he wants to get together and talk and do some things and get some stuff up on the page. So it's like it's been a really great like just branching out, and there's like a nice little community going on there. So
no, it really is good. It's good for the Valley as well. It's good for the MVL. So now let's talk about your freshman year. And the rumor I've always heard, and I think you touched a little bit about it on Hometown Heroes, is the rumor was you were not going to go to Ansonia High. You were going to go to Emmett O'Brien. I don't know if that's just an urban legend, but that had happened. And I think your freshman year, you ended up going to Ansonia, but, you still weren't the player you wanted to be yet. I don't think you started on that freshman team, if I'm correct. So, I mean, it wasn't easy in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of was... kind of brought upon. I was in 8th grade. I was at Pendergast, and Mr. Dentile was the assistant principal. He's the vice principal, and I just I'd taken the test for Emmett O'Brien. My dad went to Emmett O'Brien. My uncle was first graduating class there, and so I looked at it, and I kind of thought, and talking to some of the guys who I was kind of friends with, like Randy Sanders, and who became, I mean, I think at one point,
Chaplik, I believe.
Yeah.
Right.
So, that was a good foundation. I was like, you kind of add me to the mix, and one of my friends who was a good ball player was, kind of talking about going there. So, it was like, and he was like, he's like, hey, we could probably start like all 4 years, and I'm like, yeah, it's enticing. And
definitely.
So, but it's kind of I just brought up Randy Sanders. It's kind of funny because I remember sitting at a dinner where. All was said and done. It was our senior year. We ended up winning the state championship, and but I got to sit next. I was sitting right in between Joe Carafiello and Randy Sanders, who we like looked for each other, and just like right around like beepers before cell phones and whatever. So we would always kind of like try to find each other on the courts, because that was the best competition that you could play with and against. So we would always try to find each other. Like we would play, like Seymour High had outside courts where the lights stayed on till like 10 o'clock. Beacon Falls, I think like on Tuesdays and Thursdays they had the lights on till like 10 o'clock.
Then,
so we would try to
basketball courts over by Coon Hollow over there.
Yeah, Nolan Ryan had them on. Not Nolan Ryan, Ryan Field.
Yeah.
They had them on for. It would be nice if Nolan Ryan had them on. But, so we would always try to find each other. But what was really cool is I remember sitting there going, like, wow, like our senior year, out of everybody, Randy led the whole state in scoring.
Right.
So he was like, I think he was like 27.9 or something like that. And that was over Roshmel Jones.
Yes.
That was over everybody. Now, granted, I mean, he was in the
competition's a little different.
But
right.
he still led the state in scoring. Joe was second in the state in scoring, I think, with just under 26. And he just swiped the scoring title from Devon Parker. And that was the first year that, and you talk about, the competition.
Right.
Seymour, that was the first year that Seymour came into the NVL.
Yeah.
So, it was really interesting to see that. And it came down to the wire. Like, I mean, he beat him by like points, just a couple of points. So, it was like, kudos to Joe for his team coming in the league and, getting trash talked and whatever.
Right.
And I think they stole like 11 games and, they had a presence. So,
right.
and it was nice to kind of just be sitting in between those guys because, all of us kind of strived and kind of grew up together and played against each other and battled each other on the outside courts. And then, we were able to share a little bit of success in that, in some of the county team dinners or whatever it was that we were going to. So
right.
it was pretty cool.
So now, we talked about freshman year, as you
said.
I'm
sorry.
Right.
I got sidetracked.
Right.
So, I mean, going back, so really it came down to going back to your original question was, Mr. Gentile was, kind of heard that, he's, applying maybe
right.
on Emmett and stuff like that. And, he's the Ansonia guy. And obviously, they knew the system in the Ansonia. I didn't have any older brothers or, siblings or anything like that. So I really didn't know the program. And, kind of like growing up, you kind of heard that like Ansonia High School was a little bit of a dicey, sketchy place until, Mr. McAllister came in and kind of really cleaned everything. He just came in and cleaned house. So, but up until that point, I was like, maybe I'll go to Emmett. And then, I had Mr. Gentile brought in Carl Jankevich, who, was the freshman coach at the time and kind of came up with us in the system where, not only was he the freshman coach, but then when I moved up to JVs, he was our JV coach too. So it was like really, really smooth transition. And, I really loved playing for him as well. But yeah, he basically came in and, he just had a conversation with me and said, look, he goes, we have a great program over there. I think you're going to be an awesome fit. He goes, you're going to have to work hard. It's not going to be a cakewalk. He's like, I understand you have talent and stuff like that, but he's like, you gotta, kind of prove yourself. But if you prove yourself, he goes, he's like, I guarantee you're going to, have, success there. And that's where it kind of like, that's where it kind of came to be where it's like, okay, cool. I'm going to Ansonia and, I'm going to, go through their system. So.
Right. So freshman year, like you said, you didn't start, but, it sounds like to me that maybe you thought it was a step down by not starting, but I think the coaches, they had a plan. I mean, the first year as a freshman was really to kind of get you stronger, get you a little more coordinated with things because it sounds like these coaches had a plan in mind to, develop your career.
Yeah, I mean, I was still fumbling around with my big, gawky, goofy feet and, trying to, develop that strength where I didn't have it really. So, the coordination was like kind of there. It was just kind of coming. But,
right.
Yeah, I just needed some time and, kind of needed to be, I don't know, coddled a little bit. And, the not starting thing was fine. I mean, I was always, I always had the mindset of like, team first, work hard,
right.
and good things.
And you saw plenty of action.
Yeah, I totally did. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I ended up like, I think I ended up averaging more blocks than points.
Right.
It was like, I think I averaged like 8 or 9 blocks a game. And,
which you had some talented players too who could score. So, you probably didn't necessarily need to score all the time. I mean, I think you had Buddha Douglas on that team. I think Tom Pepe was a contributor on that team. Did Damon Perry play, I believe?
Damon played.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean,
Damon, Joe Chakowski.
Right. So, there were some talented shooters. So, I mean, if your job was to block shots, that was fine because you didn't need to be, 25 points a game.
Yeah, I mean, everybody liked to, I mean, I think anybody growing up, Eric Swicky was also, he was a scorer. He was a good 3-point guy. And Greg Bashura, who, Greg and I were the only ones that, ended up being on the senior team from that freshman year team.
Which
and we went 14-7. So, I mean, most guys kind of went off and played football or they just kind of stopped playing basketball altogether. So, we had guys that were just sound Robert Tone was a solid rebounder. Rich Mitchell was a solid solid shooter and rebounder, and just really just kind of was a victim of being 6'1" or 6'2". So,
yeah, he was a tall kid too.
Yeah, he was. He was.
Really
and he was tough. I mean, he was. I mean, I remember playing against him in 8th grade, and he was just like, I just felt like getting all these like elbows, body him up. So I liked Rich. I haven't seen him in a long time, but
So now you enter your sophomore year, and I think you've said this many times that you don't become the player you are if you don't have Ed Stramello coaching you those 2 years. I mean, one of the things I think you mentioned about Stramello that was very beneficial to you was the fact that he always said, use your hands, always use your hands. Talk about your sophomore year and Coach Stramello.
Yeah, the phrase was playing with strong hands. Playing with strong, so forearm strength, just controlling the basketball, just you get a better touch than just kind of like this tip tap kind of style of play. And I was a finesse player. I wasn't this like aggressive monster that went out there, but when it came time to to be aggressive and things like that, I mean, that's what I would do. But yeah, Coach Stramello had he had a thing where he had drills that like he really understood his players, and he would create situations and drills that would again just kind of bring the best out of people. And his rebounding drills, the passing, he was an attention to detail guy. I mean, in the Hometown Hero segment, I mean, you hear him and Coach McQueenie talking, going to basically where they would listen to they would go to these events where they would hear college coaches talk and stuff like that. And I'd been and just recently, I mean, in the past year and a half, I've been to Coach Stramello's house a couple of times, and he's got this like this den where he would even, I mean, he went as far as back then cutting out magazine articles where guys they were advertisements for it wasn't necessarily Jordan, it might have been like Sports Illustrated, where they showed like some guys in college, and he actually saved scrapbooks of guys with shooting form. So like you would see a guy that would shoot, and he was like this is elbows in and correct way of shooting. I mean, he went as far as that to do that. I was like, wow, like that's impressive. Like, I mean, and so again, just attention to detail,
because it can't be all X's and O's. I mean, you have to be able to.
It's not. And anything to get, I guess, a beneficial edge. I mean, he entertained it, and so. And I think with me, I mean, he's like, wow, this guy's like, he's good clay. Like we can mold him for sure. So I mean, I didn't have a why aren't you playing me kind of attitude. Like I just kind of sat there and said, hopefully it comes. Hopefully I'm working hard enough where it comes, and then I'll be able. And then I tried to make sure that I would take advantage of the situation where if I got to play. I try to contribute as much as I could. So
now let me ask you this: when you're in high school and you're a teenage kid, sometimes you don't understand that what they're doing and they're trying to help you to make you better. A lot of times, players can't stand their coaches because they're just on them all the time. Did you find yourself in high school saying, "God, this guy doesn't leave me alone. He's on me all the time," and then years later you realized was great he was and what he did for you, or did you know right at the time that this was?
I immediately had a lot of respect for him. So and also McQueenie too, because I kind of we forgot to touch about. I like completely forgot about this. I thought about it after we did the because sometimes just things like the memories kind of come flowing and after you do something. Yeah. So at one point, so in 8th grade citywide. Jerry from Jerry's driving school was he was the coach, and he got sick for a little while. So McQueenie actually stepped in and coached us in 8th grade. So again, talking about making the transition smooth, and we went down the history of how the torch was kind of being passed back and forth between Stramello and McQueenie, and then and like I kind of forgot that I remember walking into my freshman year and immediately having a good rapport with Coach McQueenie in history class. So so it was really cool. And again, it just, being used to, like, I mean, obviously he didn't like lay down the hammer on us in, in 8th grade, but I mean, I think he stepped in and was like, okay, well, we're definitely going to do some things that are going to be different and, make some changes and in a positive light. And so, we ended up running more plays and, ended up running more drills, passing drills and stuff like that. So, because, he definitely did a good job stepping in there. But yeah, I think, it was definitely, it was respect. And I respected the fact that he was coach. I respected the fact that, that he did what he did. I mean, a coach gets on his players when they're not, producing or they're doing things wrong. So, but I think I was doing a lot of things right. So I didn't really get too much of that. And if I couldn't do something like overcome a physical situation like the box out drills, I wouldn't like give up or complain or whatever. I would just try to make up for it in heart and determination. So, and he saw that. So then it's like, okay, well, I don't have to get, on him as much because he's doing everything he can do to, to try to just do, complete the drill. So.
Right. Lenny, when, Coach Stramello took over, it was the 89 season, Ansonia didn't have a very good first year, but you could see what was happening. I mean, I think they started the year maybe 0-9, but they came on at the end. I think they won 5 or 6 games. The following year, I believe they either made the tournament or they were close, but it was your freshman year, and you were on the freshman team, but your freshman year, they were 7-12. They had to play a big game against Derby. Derby only had 1 win, but Derby was playing them like crazy that night, trying to spoil it. They get in the tournament, they go 8-12, and then I believe your sophomore year, you guys go 12-8, I believe, something like that, maybe 11-9, have a decent run in the tournament. But your junior year, I mean, a lot of people always talk about how great that team was, and little by little, Stramello was, something was building here. You could see it.
Yeah, I mean, this conversation comes up more, more times when I see the coach, and I always try to, make him feel good about that season because it definitely was a bittersweet season because, sweet being that, I mean, the talent on that team definitely
I think you guys won like 15 games, didn't you? Maybe 14?
Yeah, we were 15-5.
Yeah.
Fell short to the NVL to Holy Cross again.
Right.
So, but, I mean, part of that was, I mean, like, they lost me to the season-ending knee injury.
Right.
So, so you had that, and then towards the end, I mean, when Tim I think got suspended for a game, and then Phil had like pneumonia, and basically our starting 5 was like, Jody and a couple guys that were playing, Jay. It was like, and Chris's ankle was actually bothering him. So it was Jody and Chris who were the only, natural starters. And then I think it was like Ray Bell and like, a couple of other guys from the JV that started against a really good E.O. Smith team. But I think if you had all of us full force in there, we probably could have, taken them. So.
Right.
And the thing is we, I tell, I mean, because you see, like, there's a game that was being called by, it's on the page, and it's being called by, was it the Waterbury?
Republican.
No. It was there's the Waterbury radio station. So what's also cool is they ended up WTR radio. So they So there's guys that I didn't know this until recently when I started getting in some of these tapes, but that radio station, they would have the guys and they would specifically call a couple games a week, mostly up in Waterbury.
Right.
And what they do is they would have, their team record the games, and they had the, obviously the announcing on the games, which is like a real treat because typically, you watch a game, you hear the crowd and there's nobody. But now you have basically a professionally called game in high school. It's a real treat, and it goes back to the 80 82 83 games. They call a bunch of games in generality stash of tapes that I ended getting, but the Sacred Heart game, there's my junior year, it's I'm not in the game because I was out with the injury, but you basically watch it, and I think in the second quarter, the announcers, Ansonia was kind of like, the team was kind of like floundering just a little bit. It wasn't that bad, but by the third quarter, when they really started to run them, I mean, Chris Ur, I think, hit like 5 or 6 threes that game, and didn't really miss. And I mean, Tim Lynch, everybody was hitting these shots, and they really talk about how the basketball never really touches the floor. And you watch the machine. I mean, it's a perfect example of what Coach Romello really put together. So if you watch that game, and you get through the second quarter, because the first quarter is fine. I mean, they do a good job, but the announcers who were kind of like, they favored the Waterbury teams.
Oh yeah,
in their calling, but they were in absolute awe of
just watching the game.
How Romello put together that team, and they talk about the height, and they talk about, again, moving without the basketball hardly touching the ground, the passing, the fact that just about everybody on the team could shoot. I mean, it's a real treat to watch. Now the guys Sean Bazemore from Sacred Heart and Mike Sanders, like, man, can't you put out a game where we're doing real well? So, But it's cool to talk to those guys.
Right. So now, junior year ends, and again, it was a great season. Everybody wants to win a championship, but you have to look at the big picture, and the big picture is this team went 15-5 in the regular season. So I mean, the program was getting better and better. Senior year, Coach Romello steps down. He takes a principal's job at Willis School, I believe, and Coach McQueenie returns. He was gone for 5 years. He comes back after, being gone for 5 years. I believe he even coached the girls' team for a couple of years. What were the expectations? Because, you guys had a lot of height that year. I mean, you're talking yourself, Mrazek, Coughlin, I believe Joe Jakowski. I mean,
no, Joe
didn't go that year.
But I mean, Pat Lynch, Ari Crooks, Luke Richmond, Terrence Washington.
Yeah, I mean, it was just you had so much height on that team that year.
Jim Froelich.
And the funny thing is, too, is, you had a lot of athletes as well. And they had just come off, a lot of those guys winning a state championship, against Bloomfield in football, which Ansonia has always been known for their football. So basketball kind of always gets overshadowed a little bit. But you guys come in, and I believe you guys finished that year 17-3. But the ironic thing is that your season almost wasn't going to happen that year. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, before I get into that, pretty much everybody on that team, I mean, with the exception of maybe Greg, Bashura, including Art Denby, who had a body of a college athlete like already. I mean, he was like ripped and shredded. I mean, he's 5'9", 5'10", and he was our point guard. Wasn't he? I mean, he was asked by Coach Jinkevich to come out and play. Like, he didn't even, it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to go try out for the team and just, play. Like, he was invited by Coach Jinkevich, so it turned out to be our, starting point guard.
Right.
One of the reasons for that is, well, first of all, I mean, everybody on the team pretty much can dunk the basketball, whether it's practice or whatever, potentially in a game. I mean, including Terrence Washington, who he dunked on somebody in 8th grade. I heard that was the rumor, and he caught a couple of dunks in varsity that year as a freshman coming off the bench, which is like crazy. So I'm looking forward to seeing some other tapes come out where I'm able to to watch him play. But Art, just want to talk about Art real quick. If you watch the state championship game, which is actually on, it's on the page, he fouled out in the last 2 minutes. But the reason why he fouled out was he was playing a division, he's playing up against a Division I point guard, man to man, and Kyle Commodore, and a guy who was averaging 24 points a game and kept him to 17. And I watched that game where he was playing the defense on him, and he was absolutely tough. And, and he had a guard guys like, Harold Miller, and, there's a guy up in Willoughby that was just, crazy. So his athleticism at the point was huge. But going back to what you had just said as far as
your injury,
injury, yeah. So apparently, my knee didn't heal up the way we kind of thought it was. The doctor was kind of like, he ended up giving me an ACL brace and never told me that I had a partial tear in the ACL. So it was just like, I always felt like, and he was a sports doctor, but I felt like I was just kind of like it was almost like a fast food chain situation where I just felt like I was just being kind of run through. Okay, whatever. We got your knee open. We did this. Okay. Oh, too bad. There's something else wrong with you.
Right.
So, but I had kind of had to find that out on my own. So over the summer, while I was practicing down in my home court in Colony Park, I went up to dunk the basketball, and I came down and, my knee buckled, and it put me out for 3 days, and I had to really just do the Rice method, the rest it, ice it, compress it, elevate it situation. I didn't go to the doctors at that time, and I was just extremely leery about it. Like, I knew it was there. I didn't know that it could happen, at any time.
Right.
But, I kind of nursed it back to health on my own. We came down to where, we had the tryouts and we had the team going, and, it was announced being captain of the team and stuff like that. So we ended up, I ended up going through the season, and I always kind of felt like it could do that, like when I was making cuts, which makes sense because it's, it's a lateral kind of movement where it can really, get to you. So it was 8 games again into my senior season where I went up for an alley-oop, and just come off of a really great game against Willoughby where Phil threw me a nice alley-oop. But we had a play that we kind of ran where if the lane was kind of open or opened up, I would come down the lane and they would throw me a lob, and I would catch it and throw it down for a dunk. So we came off a game in Willoughby where it worked, and we tried it at Naugatuck, and I kind of just got bumped a little bit out of the way. There was somebody kind of underneath me, and I ended up coming down, and my knee buckled again, and it was it was very evident that something was wrong. So I didn't want to go back to that doctor. So Coach McQueenie basically recommended and brought me to Dr. Diana out of Hamden, and who's now on he's on I don't even think he does regular practice anymore, but he's on the radio all the time for NPR, and so he's and he played for the Miami Dolphins. I think he was on the 84 AFC championship team, and so but anyway, so he basically just kind of took my knee and did this thing to it, and he's like, he goes, your ACL is completely torn, and he goes, you need immediate surgery. And so all these thoughts were just kind of running through my head, and I just said, I go, well, I thought, I was like, if I do this right now, I said, I blow any chance of college or scholarship, or there's just not enough there, especially since I missed most of my, junior season. So I just said, I was like, can we get a tighter knee brace? Because I was like, I got this far. I said, and I said, it only happens when, if you're go for an alley-oop or something like that. I mean, so he said, he goes, we could do that. He goes, I would recommend getting it, immediately, after. So, so I just made that decision where I was like, all right, we're going to finish out the season and, just kind of tighten it up and just eat.
Were you nervous at all, though, throughout that season that it was going to get, it probably couldn't get any worse because it was already torn, but were you nervous that it was just going to not cooperate, and were you always thinking about that each game? I
think right after that mentally, I went, because it kind of so after that, my my confidence was a little shaken for sure, and kind of coincided. I remember coming down with an ear infection too, so your equilibrium's off, and so it was so I'm battling the knee, ear infection. So now my shooting just fell off. I remember just popping up for an 8-footer, and it just okay, cool, this is good, and then it just kind of rattles in and out, and you're just dealing with these little just little things. So, but the coaches were great, and they were just keep shooting, shoot through. We got rebounders, we got this, we got that. So.
Right.
But yeah, I remember my confidence being a little bit shaken, and it didn't stop me from dunking. Basically, the only thing we did was we just eliminated the alley-oop.
Right.
Because it's too compromising.
Right. And if you go down the wrong way.
Right. So whereas if I went up and dunked my own way, I just had more control, and I remember I was up in Naugatuck, 4 or 5 games later or whatever it was, and I went up and literally went up. Steve's got the tape. The good thing is that there's footage out there of it, so I want to grab it. But and I got to keep hounding Steve for it because he had a couple dunks that game too. They were fast break dunks.
Right.
Where I got a nice nice pass from Phil, and I just went down and just tomahawked over like 3 guys on Naugatuck, and and I kind of got, the ref was like, he's like, can't hang on the rim, and I was just like, I wasn't doing it for showboating. It was more or less like I was waiting for the people to clear out, so I wasn't gonna like land on anybody and hurt my knee. So
you talk. I mean, we like to cover every game, but it's hard. But the tournament, you guys get in there, and I think like in the beginning of the first half, it was a rough game against North Haven. That might have been the not the quarterfinal game, maybe the second round. The
North Haven game, I think, was the first game.
Yeah,
okay. But we blew them out. I don't know. I don't really remember a quarter by quarter situation.
I just remember being at that game. I remember like it was a little shaky the first half. I think Art was turning the ball over a little bit. But I mean, you guys got through that game, and as you said, you blew them out. But I mean, you talk about the championship game. St. Joe's is, if anybody's Duke of high school basketball, it's St. Joe's. I mean, I think they had won, 7 or 8 championships going into that game?
I think they were 8 deep by that time, 7 or 8.
Right. So let me just ask you this before we even talk about the game. I mean, you're going through this like up and down season where, you don't even know if you're going to be on the court and things like that. Was there ever a time, and, I'll ask you the same question after we talk about the game, but was there ever a time where you just mentally broke down and like, said, oh my God, this is becoming too much?
I think it was the only time I had a little bit of a breakdown was when I got hurt in that eighth game with the Naugatuck game, because I didn't know what was going on. I had no idea what was actually wrong with the knee. I thought that I was just always going to have a bad knee, and that I wasn't going to be able to play on the next level, and this and that, and then obviously the season potentially being in jeopardy. But once I got past that, it was fine. And my own little ups and downs personally within the season, within the game, it didn't outweigh the fact that we just came off winning 16 in a row. Right. So the team's still going great.
I think that team finished 17-3 regular season, correct? Which was huge.
In 2 games, we only our first 3 games. I mean, we beat Seymour in the second game, but the other 2 games that we lost were by 1 point.
Right.
And we got beat our first game up at Kennedy. The guys are just coming off winning the state championship for football. They're not ready. We weren't 100% ready, to take those guys. I mean, we edged them. I mean, it took, everything to gel through the season to beat those guys twice, because we had to beat them in the tournament, and then we also had to beat them the second time around, at our place. And that was one of the conversations I just had with Marlon Parker, who was a Billy Finn Award winner. Harold Miller was a Billy Finn Award winner for Waterbury in '95, and Marlon won it in '96, which is the which is the award for being the best Waterbury player out of all the schools up there.
Right.
So I mean, he's no joke. So, and he also had Armin Lavasser up there, who was 3-point shooter. But I mean, we lost to Crosby in overtime at home by 1 point.
Right.
So I mean, geez, I mean, we were just right there, and Holy Cross was undefeated all the way up until they played us.
Oh yeah.
10 games into the
season. Great team. Yeah.
We handed them their only loss. We ruined their perfect season. And then we won out, and they won out, and that's where, there was a shot for us to win the NVL. If we beat them for the second time, it would have forced a playoff game.
Right.
And, who knows how bad we would have beat each other up. I mean, they ended up winning the states in double L. We ended up winning the states in L. So it kind of was like a good, good ending. So let's talk about the game. I mean, I think you... And I apologize if I get it wrong, but I think you had 31 points in that game, maybe 32. You're playing against, though, like I said, an established program, because, Ansonia is known for football. They've never really been that basketball school. And you're playing against a school that, although it's had success in football, they're known for their basketball. They had a legendary coach in Vito Morelli. Montelli, right. And I believe, during the course of that game, especially if you watch the tape, I mean, they tried to pull a fast one on you guys towards the end of the game, which I know that coach set that play up. And I mean, that was a little scary, but just talk about that whole game in general, what it was like. All right, so this is where I get to go into my Al Bundy 4 touchdowns in one game, Polk High. So this is where 31 points, 19 rebounds. That game. I guess I got to start off with just the bus ride up, where I was just mentally. I remember getting into that mental state of that game,
right?
And that out of anything is where the strong hands kind of was coming into play. I was having a great tournament in a rebound sense. I mean, I literally tripled my output in rebounds for the tournament as opposed to the regular season. I think it was only averaging like 5 or 6 rebounds during the season because whatever, Jim was around, Phil was around, Steve was around. I'm blocking shots. So my rebounds are naturally going to be lower anyways.
Right.
But I made it a point to create opportunities for myself by just being as aggressive as I possibly could. So I mean, the Charles Barkley kind of came out of me that game,
right?
And where I just wanted to grab every rebound I could. So I mean, I had 19 rebounds that game. It felt like more. I felt like I honestly felt like I touched the ball like when I left that game. I felt like I had 100 rebounds.
Right.
So. But yeah, going into it, mentally was just getting prepared, and I was just like, okay, just quiet on the way up, and was just really just kind of getting ready. And before the game, I'm in warm-ups, and Pop Shortle called me over, visited every game, and legendary Pop Shortell. So he took me aside and said, he goes, you're going to do it. He's like, you're going to do it for Ansonia. Go out there and win this for Ansonia. Right. And that was like, that was really cool. And I joke about this with Steve. I said, I was kind of expecting to call you over and then call Pat over, call Art over, but he didn't. And, so he really he's seen a lot. So I mean, the fact that he kind of if he put a $20 bill on the game and said, Lenny's going to do this, he would have, won some money. So, so he called it, and I mean, giving him a hug at the end of the game was like a great feeling, seeing that, and but so getting into the game, I mean, it was just having that mental, just awareness, where is the ball at all times, and how can I just be around it, and I mean, I've seen the game a couple times, more than a couple, and I look at it and I'm like, wow, I was like, I really was grabbing offensive rebound and creating those opportunities and getting fouled, fouled, and
kind of came full circle for you that game.
It did. Right. It did. It was like just really, really nice ending. And as far as what was going on with the team, and we had to play them. I mean, they
you have to play a perfect game.
Yeah, they didn't. It wasn't like they were a low-scoring team. I mean, they scored a lot of points. I mean, both of us didn't have a great output in scoring. I mean, there was a 56 to 54, I think, was the final score. So it's not a lot of points. I mean, especially when we're used to scoring 65, 70. Right. I mean, that's what we were used to scoring. So. It was a little bit of a grind. I mean, obviously, I wasn't having any issues, but like I said, I was trying my hardest to just keep us ahead, and so and then the memories kind of come back as I watch the game. But I mean, I think I brought it up in Hometown Heroes where we watched Steve, Art fouled out and did a great job against Kyle Commodore. And Steve, the last minute of the game, when you watch it, I mean, even if you just go to that last minute, you don't have to watch it, the whole game. But if you go to the last minute of the game, Steve is playing, we're in his zone, I think. And Steve's playing the point guard all the way up at the half court line, basically chest bumping him and not letting him get through. Right. And basically created a situation where they turned the ball over and they threw it out going all the way down to underneath our basket and created that turnover where we were able to take the ball out of bounds. And I think the game was tied at that point. Right. And we ended up going ahead or something like that, or it put us ahead by 1 point. One or two. Yeah, 1 point. Yeah. And so that was a huge play, and it was gutsy because he could have gotten called foul, and the refs kind of just
they let you guys play.
Yeah, they let us play, and so then we kind of got it set up where, we had a nice little out of bounds play where Coach McQueen, you call timeout and set up a different play than the stack, because the stack is, I think at that point it was getting kind of old.
Right.
So he kind of had to create something new, and I kind of came up around, and Steve got me the ball, and had a nice little jumper that I got a nice shooter's bounce on it, and he also had a key block in that minute too.
Right.
So they ended up shooting one of the guys shot a free throw, and one of the St. Joe's guys grabbed the rebound, and he actually ended up, it was like a quick thing, and the guy went up to shoot it, and Steve actually blocked it. It's quick. You have to kind of watch it, but he did that too. So it was like the little things that,
right.
That he ended up doing. And, Jim was tough that game. Phil was tough on D. I mean, it just, it was a great, kind of coming together.
Right.
Greg Bashir came in, gave me a couple assists, which was nice, and
right.
Just recognizing that, it was getting open, and or actually I was kind of shooting over guys that, that were on me, but I was just, I was catching a little bit of fire there. So it was good. But yeah.
And then they tried to get the ref to call a foul. They tried to pull that.
Yeah,
fast
which again,
one.
it's also on tape. Phil and Kyle Commodore are just out of focus on the on the screen, but you see at the end the buzzer went off, and the buzzer went off before the time went off, so the court got stormed.
Right.
And everybody ended up kind of, they had to get off. We didn't get called for the technical because the buzzer went off.
Right.
If it didn't go off and people stormed the court, we probably would have gotten a technical.
Right.
Cheerleaders were out on there, and fans were starting to jump on. So everybody gets off. I remember there was a panic, and again, you see it in the footage. So everybody gets off, and then that's when we were supposed to take the ball out of bounds, and there's half a second left or whatever. And before the ball actually gets inbounded, Kyle pulls Phil Mrazek on top of him, and if the ref doesn't see it, it looks like Phil ran over him.
Right.
But the ref saw it, and
thankfully, right,
because it would have been horrible if it went the other way and they got to shoot a free throw and either tie the game or beat us. So
right.
So, and then Phil hit the last point, which was awesome, and it was celebrated like madmen after. So
the buzzer goes off.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, you guys are state champions. Number two, you're the MVP of the tournament. But the thing to me is, 8th game of the year, you get hurt. You think your season's probably over. You get to play. You play through this injury all year. Obviously, during the emotion of the game, you're celebrating with your teammates. You don't really have a lot of time to think about all that stuff. But was there a point where you just broke down because of everything that went down throughout that whole season with you?
Yeah, I think you just want to hear me say that I cried a lot, but no. No,
you need to write a book. I mean,
it was. Yes, I cried. No, if it came to the book, but no. It was really it was like a huge weight. It was a cloud nine type feeling.
Right.
I mean, I said, there's a feeling that you guys might not understand as far as being able to dunk the basketball, but that moment succeeded that. I mean,
right.
Because I could at that point, I could dunk the basketball whenever I want, and maybe it's in front of a crowd, maybe it's not, but that was that was huge. And I remember talking to the press after, and I don't know, I felt like there was a little bit of dirtiness going on in the in the game with the St. Joe's guys and stuff like that. I remember my knee brace getting swiped a couple of times, guys were trying to get at it or whatever. So for me, I was teenager, we just win, and I kind of without actually bashing St. Joe's or anything like that, because it was good sport. I won sportsmanship trophies and stuff like that throughout my high school days. But I was I wanted it to be known that hey. So that's when I was talking to the press after, and that's when I actually released for the first time, because they didn't know.
Right.
So I was how does it feel? Blah, blah, blah. I was it feels pretty good. I was I go, it feels pretty good to win it with a torn ACL, and they're like, what?
Right.
So I was I played the whole season with a torn ACL, and I'm going to have surgery. Now, at first they were they almost didn't believe me, but But they, after talking to him, they were like, wow.
Yeah, that is incredible. I mean, that is just, you can't even make that up. But,
yeah.
I mean,
you usually hear ACL, they're out for the season. I mean, back then, you tear your ACL,
you were done.
And you're a pro. You're not coming back for a year.
Right.
The year was like the standard. I tore my ACL, and I was playing for Milford Academy that in like December.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I healed up really well. The doctor, Dr. Diana was awesome.
Right.
He did a really great job. And as a matter of fact, I had like a little bit of a knee issue 7-8 years ago where, I had a prune in my knee, and I was like, I went specifically to see him.
Right.
Now, he didn't remember me because he was just getting into the practice at that point. So here I have a young doctor on my knee. He does a great job. I mean, I think the technology was good. I mean, I know now the ACL surgery it's a same day surgery. It's almost like,
right.
You're in and out. I was in the hospital for 3 days on a motion
right.
machine.
That's
like that,
crazy.
that was the thing. And, I had friends that had torn their ACL, and, they had like these hideous scars, and like the doctors did a bad job. Like they had knee problems for the rest of their life. My leg actually got stronger. The ACL, I mean, it got stronger. So, so kudos to him. But I went and I saw him, and he goes, "Oh yeah," he goes, "I see you have, you had an ACL surgery." I was like, "Yeah, that was you." He's like, "Man, I did a good job."
Right. But it is remarkable, and I think the biggest thing that people take out of this is how you said you weren't probably the best player in the beginning. You didn't start as a freshman. You just kept working at it, and then senior year, I think it's ironic too because everybody on that team pretty much played football except yourself. Maybe
yeah.
I think you mentioned Greg.
Yeah, Greg was,
right.
Yeah.
So for the basketball player who didn't play football to be the MVP of the tournament, I mean that's unbelievable.
Yeah,
and I think
it
that's
gives it
pretty,
that little extra.
Yeah, I think it's pretty
nice
ironic that it was the basketball player, who that was his one sport. He's MVP of the tournament, and I mean, you could always look back, and every time you walk in that school, know that you're always going to see that banner. And I mean, it's got to make you smile every time you see it.
Absolutely. And, in all honesty, I mean, I know like just I've been, because of the MVL page, I've kind of, gotten active and, going to some of the games now and stuff like that. And, Ansonia went like 15-5 last year. So, I mean, they starting to kind of like, get some success, and I'm hoping that this year they're gonna, get a little bit more success. Obviously, Sacred Heart's a monster,
right?
So, and they're even though Mustafa Haran is off in Auburn, and Tyron Flowers is up in UMass,
right.
They still have a stacked team. So for the MVL, they have a. Actually, I don't even know. They might have moved up. They might have moved up to the L, and I don't know if Ansonia's in the L. I'm not sure how all that works.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Now there's like more school, like you got Woodland, and there's like
Waterbury Career. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, there's I guess more opportunity to kind of get more wins. I don't think it's set up where you play every school twice and you have 20 games. I think you play 20 games and you might only play one school once. So because there's so many different teams now. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see, and I'm really looking forward to seeing if Ansonia can do it again. I don't want that to be the only basketball championship. I mean, they have so many football championships. It's
you want to get some more.
At some point, there's going to be at some point. I mean, with the success in the football program, and you're not even be able to see the basketball banners.
Right. Exactly.
So, which is great still. I mean, we, obviously want to keep those coming too. So.
Right. Well, Lenny, we could talk all day, and at some point down the road, I mean, we got to have you back. We got to try to get some of the other players from that team, just
absolutely.
to kind of, I could basically sit there while you three talk or whoever. But you've had an unbelievable career. I mean, to win a state title in a school that's not known for basketball and had never had one, it's remarkable. And I mean, you should be very proud of yourself. That team should be proud of itself. That was an unbelievable team, and it's hard to believe it's been over 20 years, but. Congratulations.
Going on 22.
Right. So. Congratulations to all of you, and I really do thank you for coming on today.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, Mike.
It's
been a pleasure.
And that was Lenny Svelnys. I finally got it right. And he was the MVP of the 1995 Class L tournament for the Ansonia Chargers of basketball. For Valley Sports Rewind, I'm Mike Canicci saying goodbye, everyone.